Imagine discovering an artifact so profound that it forces historians to question everything we thought we knew about the trajectory of human civilization. What if a single object could challenge the timelines we've built, the assumptions about our ancestors' intelligence, and even the very framework through which we interpret historical change? Today, we delve into one such artifact, an enigma that sits at the intersection of archaeology, neuroscience, and philosophy. Its implications extend far beyond the dusty pages of history books. It nudges at the boundaries of human perception, forcing us to reconsider how societies adapt, how collective memory operates, and how historical signals ripple through time like invisible currents in the social brain. This is not a story of dramatic treasure or battlefield conquest. It is a story of cognition, adaptation, and the invisible threads that connect generations. The artifact in question, an intricately carved object discovered in a region thought to have been sparsely populated at the time, whose design and inscriptions defy conventional categorization, forces us to confront a paradox. The human mind is both the recorder and the filter of history, and yet history itself can act as a lens reshaping the mind in ways we are only beginning to understand. From the moment this object was unearthed, experts were struck by its anomaly. Its construction suggested a level of technical and symbolic sophistication previously thought impossible for the era. Materials sourced from hundreds of kilometers away were integrated with precise craftsmanship, implying not just knowledge of distant resources but a social network capable of coordinating complex supply chains. At first glance, it seems like a simple artifact, yet when you examine its patterns, inscriptions, and contextual placement, a cognitive map of ancient perception emerges. This is where neuroscience begins to intertwine with history. Human cognition, particularly in stressful or resource-limited environments, is predisposed to pattern recognition. We see structure where chaos exists. We create narratives to navigate uncertainty. This artifact seems designed to exploit that cognitive tendency, encoding layers of information that only a collective, socially distributed intelligence could decode. In essence, it challenges the notion that history is linear, or that knowledge accumulation follows a neat, unbroken trajectory. It reminds us that perception is itself a historical force, shaping the evolution of societies in ways invisible to conventional archaeology. When we analyze societies through the lens of stress adaptation, this artifact becomes even more fascinating. Consider the human brain as a system that responds dynamically to stress. Neurons fire in complex sequences, synapses rewire, and memory prioritizes certain stimuli over others. Societies operate in analogous ways. Collective stress, whether environmental, political, or social, triggers adaptive behaviors that are encoded in cultural artifacts, rituals, and symbolic objects. This artifact, perhaps unknowingly, acts as a kind of social neurostimulus. Its intricate design may have functioned as a focus for collective attention, a repository of encoded strategies for resource management, or even a mnemonic device for intergenerational knowledge transfer. In other words, what appears to be a simple carved object may in fact be a signal, broadcasting encoded strategies across the social network of an entire civilization. History, when seen through this lens, is less a sequence of discrete events, and more a dynamic flow of informational currents, where objects, symbols, and rituals act as carriers of collective memory. What makes this artifact revolutionary is the way it reframes our understanding of human intelligence. Historically, intelligence has been measured in isolation, technological output, architectural achievement, or written language. But what if intelligence is fundamentally relational, distributed across networks of people, communities, and artifacts? This object suggests precisely that. Its creators were not lone geniuses. They were participants in a social system where cognition was shared, amplified, and encoded in material culture. The artifact becomes a mirror, reflecting not just individual ingenuity, but the emergent intelligence of a society. From a psychological perspective, this aligns with our understanding of distributed cognition. Knowledge is not confined to neurons, but exists in the interaction between brain, environment, and the cultural objects we create. The artifact becomes both a node and a conduit, a way for collective intelligence to leave an imprint on the temporal fabric of history. Furthermore, its discovery forces us to confront the limitations of our own perception. Much like the brain filters information to prevent sensory overload, history filters information to create coherent narratives. Archaeologists, historians, and even casual learners are guided by mental models that prioritize certain types of evidence while neglecting others. Anomalies like this artifact disrupt those models, prompting cognitive dissonance, a phenomenon well documented in neuroscience. When faced with information that contradicts our expectations, our minds experience a subtle tension, a recalibration of assumptions. This artifact provokes exactly that response, reminding us that the gaps in historical knowledge are not just voids but active spaces where perception and imagination meet. It becomes a tool not merely for learning about the past, but for interrogating the way we interpret any past. The implications extend into philosophy. What is the boundary between history as it happened and history as we perceive it? How much of our narrative is shaped by collective filtering, memory biases, and social heuristics? The artifact also opens a window into the adaptive strategies of early societies. In conditions of scarcity, environmental volatility, or social stress, communities must find ways to stabilize behavior and coordinate action. Anthropologists have long noted that rituals, art, and symbolic objects serve these functions, providing psychological anchoring and reinforcing group cohesion. This artifact, with its complex inscriptions and patterns, may have been a central node in such a system. It could encode social norms, resource distribution protocols, or collective decision-making heuristics. Viewed through the lens of energy systems, the society that produced it behaves like a complex network where each individual contributes to the flow of information and energy. The artifact is analogous to a circuit breaker or a node of signal amplification, modulating behavior across the network and buffering the system against stress-induced collapse. In other words, what we might initially perceive as mere decoration or enigmatic symbolism may actually represent a sophisticated form of societal resilience, a proto-technology of collective cognition. And yet, the artifact does more than just illustrate the intelligence of its makers. It challenges the temporal assumptions of history itself. Radiocarbon dating places it in a period previously thought to be technologically and culturally rudimentary. This forces a re-evaluation of what constitutes progress. Linear models of human development, primitive to advanced, simple to complex, are deeply ingrained in historical and educational narratives. But this object suggests a more nuanced perspective. Human societies may experiment, innovate, and regress in cycles, leaving behind signals that we are only beginning to decipher. Just as the brain is non-linear with feedback loops and emergent properties, history too may be non-linear, with knowledge emerging in pockets, dispersed across time and space, sometimes preserved, sometimes lost. Each artifact becomes a node in this temporal network, a signal of intelligence, adaptation, and resilience transmitted across centuries. The philosophical implications are equally profound. If intelligence and adaptation are distributed phenomena, encoded in social networks and material culture, then the boundaries between individual and collective, past and present, perception and reality become porous. This artifact becomes not just a historical object, but a philosophical lens, allowing us to explore the dynamics of human cognition across generations. How does society encode lessons from the past? How are collective biases and heuristics transmitted, reinforced, or subverted? To what extent does the act of interpretation itself reshape history? Each of these questions reflects a deep intertwining of neuroscience, psychology, and historiography, suggesting that understanding an artifact is as much an exercise in self-reflection as it is in archaeology. Perhaps the most startling aspect of this discovery is the twist in its apparent purpose. Early interpretations assumed the artifact was ceremonial or decorative, a passive object of symbolic significance. But closer analysis suggests a more active role. It may have functioned as a form of societal immune system, a buffer against collapse during periods of stress. Anthropological analogies suggest that societies encode fail-safes within culture. Rituals, stories, and objects act to stabilize behavior when crises arise. In this sense, the artifact was not passive. It was protective. Just as the human body responds to stress by activating neural and hormonal pathways, societies respond to environmental or social perturbations by activating collective behaviors encoded in symbols and objects. What appears to be a fragile, delicate carving may have been a keystone of societal resilience, preserving knowledge, maintaining cohesion, and guiding behavior through uncertainty. This reframes our understanding of vulnerability. Moments of apparent weakness in history may, In fact, be expressions of adaptive strength, encoded and preserved in ways we are only beginning to perceive. From a neuroscientific perspective, the parallels are striking. Consider the way the brain handles unexpected stimuli. When confronted with novelty or paradox, neural circuits engage in predictive recalibration, adjusting expectations and updating internal models. Societies operate on a similar principle. Unanticipated events, climatic shifts, migrations, or technological disruptions trigger adaptive mechanisms encoded in culture, governance, and social practice. The artifact may have served as one such mechanism, a tangible anchor for attention, memory, and decision-making. It illustrates a principle that contemporary psychology and neuroscience continue to uncover. Adaptive intelligence is distributed, relational, and deeply intertwined with the environment. The past, in this sense, becomes an active participant in shaping cognition, rather than a passive record of events. In practical terms, the implications for historians, archaeologists, and social scientists are enormous. It challenges the way we structure research, interpret data, and construct narratives. Traditional excavation methods and linear chronologies may overlook the subtle signals embedded in material culture. Interdisciplinary approaches combining archaeology with network theory, cognitive science, and complexity theory become not optional but essential. The artifact serves as a case study in epistemic humility. Our models of history, intelligence, and adaptation are provisional, limited by the biases and assumptions we bring to the interpretive process. Each discovery, each anomaly, is a reminder that the human story is far more intricate and adaptive than conventional frameworks allow. But beyond the academic and scientific implications lies a deeply human lesson. This artifact, mysterious and complex, speaks to the enduring capacity of humans to navigate uncertainty, encode knowledge, and create resilience through collective effort. It is a testament to ingenuity, collaboration, and the subtle intelligence embedded in social systems. When we look at history through this lens, the past is not merely a series of events or dates, but a living network of ideas, strategies, and adaptations. Each object, each signal, becomes part of a continuous conversation spanning generations, a dialogue between perception, cognition, and action. And in that dialogue, we find insights not only about those who came before us, but about ourselves, our biases, our heuristics, and the ways we construct meaning from complexity. As we conclude this exploration, one idea crystallizes. The artifact is a mirror of collective intelligence, a signal of adaptive power, and a challenge to conventional historical narrative. It teaches us that vulnerability and resilience are intertwined, that anomalies are often the key to deeper understanding, and that the human mind, both individual and collective, operates as a system of remarkable flexibility and foresight. Perhaps the greatest lesson is that history is not a static record, but a dynamic, evolving network of information, perception, and adaptation, continuously shaping the trajectory of civilizations and the minds that interpret them. So the next time you encounter a fragment of the past, a carved object, a mysterious inscription, or a seemingly trivial artifact, pause and consider, what signals does it carry? What adaptive strategies, cognitive maps, or relational intelligence might be encoded in its form? How does it challenge your assumptions about human history and your own perception of time, causality, and resilience? In pondering these questions, we engage in the same process our ancestors did, decoding signals, navigating uncertainty, and participating in the ongoing flow of human cognition. If this artifact teaches us anything, it is that history is a living dialogue between minds, artifacts, and societies across time. The boundaries between the observer and the observed blur, and in that blur lies the possibility of understanding human intelligence not as isolated acts of genius, but as a distributed, emergent, and adaptive phenomenon. The past becomes a lens, the artifact a signal, and our perception an active participant in the reconstruction of knowledge. Each discovery, each anomaly, reminds us that we are both students and participants in a story that spans millennia, where cognition, adaptation, and history are inseparably intertwined. We invite you to reflect, to question, and to participate in this dialogue. Share your thoughts in the comments. How does this artifact reshape your perception of history and human intelligence? Engage with the ideas, explore the paradoxes, and consider the implications not only for understanding the past, but for interpreting the present and imagining the future. If you found this exploration illuminating, like the video, Subscribe to Past Lens for more journeys into the hidden layers of history, cognition, and the enduring signals that shape human civilization. Together, we can continue to uncover the subtle threads that weave our collective past and present into an intricate, awe-inspiring tapestry.